I'm a 27-year-old woman, and I've been dreaming about my wedding for as long as I can remember. You know how some people have Pinterest boards for weddings before they're even engaged? That was me, except I had mental Pinterest boards in my head since I was 10. It wasn't about the grandeur or extravagance. It was just the idea of celebrating love surrounded by the people who mattered most. A couple of months ago, my longtime partner, who's 30, proposed, and I couldn't have been happier. But what started as the happiest time of my life has quickly turned into a nightmare thanks to one person, my aunt. Let me set the stage a little bit. My fiancé and I aren't flashy people. We're both working professionals and pretty practical when it comes to money. We set a budget of $20,000 for the wedding. It's not huge, but it's enough to plan something intimate, elegant, and entirely ours. We found the perfect venue, a gorgeous garden space that feels straight out of a storybook but without the storybook price tag. Everything was falling into place. Now here's where things get messy. My aunt, who's 50, is that person in the family. You know, the type loud, opinionated, and wealthy enough to think her money gives her control over everyone else's lives. She throws these ridiculous parties that feel more like PR events than family gatherings, always making it about herself. She's also incredibly controlling, which is why I've always kept my distance. Unfortunately, keeping her out of this was not as easy as I thought. When she heard I got engaged, she called me immediately to congratulate me and offered to pitch in $5,000 for the wedding. That sounds generous, right? But there was a catch. She wanted input on the guest list. Specifically, she wanted to invite a bunch of her friends and business acquaintances. I declined politely, explaining that we already had a tight budget and wanted to keep it small. She acted like she understood, but that's when the subtle undermining started. At first, it was little things. She'd mention ideas for decor or suggest vendors, claiming she just wanted to help. I thought she was just being overly enthusiastic, but then bigger problems started popping up. The first major issue was the venue. A week after we booked it, I got a call saying it had been double booked for the same day, and we'd need to find another date. I was devastated. We had already started coordinating with vendors, and changing the date would mess everything up. Here's where it gets weird. A few days later, my aunt casually mentioned she had booked the same venue for a big event around the same time. She said it with this smug little smile, like she wanted me to connect the dots. I didn't want to jump to conclusions, but it felt suspicious. Things spiraled from there. My aunt started telling relatives about our wedding plans, like she was co-hosting the event. People kept coming to me with questions about things she had decided, like themes and menu choices, and I had no idea what they were talking about. It turns out she had been framing her suggestions as finalized plans to other family members. My fiancé, bless him, has been incredibly patient through all this, but even he was losing his cool. He told me I needed to confront her before things got worse, but I was still trying to keep the peace. That changed when I found out she had invited her own friends to the wedding. These weren't mutual family friends or people I knew, just random acquaintances of hers. She claimed they might as well come since I've talked so much about your wedding to them. The audacity. The final straw came when I discovered she contacted my caterer without telling me. She had the menu changed to some over the top, expensive options I had specifically said I didn't want. I was furious. When I confronted her about it, she just brushed it off, saying, "You'll thank me later." That's when I realized she wasn't just being overbearing, she was actively trying to take over my wedding. I've spent the past few days unraveling all the damage she's done. My fiancé and I have had to scramble to find a backup venue, reconfirm all our vendor contracts, and deal with the fallout of her meddling. It's exhausting. And honestly, I'm at my wit's end. This was supposed to be one of the happiest times of my life, and instead, I'm stuck putting out fires caused by someone who claims to care about me. I decided to share my story here because I don't know what else to do. I don't want to cut her out completely because she's family, but I also can't let her continue to steamroll me. Have any of you dealt with a relative like this? How do I set boundaries without causing an all-out family war? Update 1. After posting my story on Reddit, I was blown away by the support. Thousands of comments poured in, with nearly everyone telling me the same thing. I needed to take back control of my wedding and stop letting my aunt dictate everything. Suggestions ranged from uninviting her entirely to exposing her behavior to the whole family. The clarity and encouragement from strangers were exactly the push I needed. The first step was uninviting my aunt from the wedding. I didn't want to drag this out, so I sent her a straightforward text. I explained that her actions had caused too much stress and confusion, and I needed to move forward without her involvement. Within minutes, my phone started lighting up. She called me repeatedly, left voicemails, and sent a barrage of texts. They alternated between guilt-tripping, "I was just trying to help," and outright anger, "Good luck pulling this off without me." Word traveled fast in my family. By the next day, half my relatives were weighing in. Some applauded my decision, saying they'd seen this coming for years. Others called me ungrateful for turning down her help and said I should have found a way to compromise. Meanwhile, my fiancé was my rock through all of this. He reminded me that this was our wedding and that we didn't owe anyone else a say in it. With her officially uninvited, I turned to the next problem, the guest list. While going through RSVPs, I realized my aunt had invited 15 of her own friends without consulting me. These were people I didn't know, and certainly hadn't planned to feed or entertain. I immediately contacted the wedding planner and crossed all their names off the list. Of course, this caused more drama, but I didn't care at this point. My aunt could deal with explaining to her friends why they weren't invited anymore. Next, my fiancé and I focused on securing a new venue. We found a smaller but equally beautiful location, an outdoor garden space that felt more intimate and personal. It was a bit of a scramble to adjust the vendor schedules, but we managed. Looking back, it was a blessing in disguise. The new venue fit our vision better than the first one, and it was more budget-friendly. Just as we started to feel like we were getting things back on track, my aunt dropped her next bombshell. She announced she was hosting a family celebration on the same day as our wedding. She framed it as a casual gathering for relatives who couldn't travel for the wedding, but I didn't buy it for a second. Something about the timing felt off. That's when my cousin, her daughter, stepped in. My cousin and I have always been close despite her mom's antics. She confided that the family celebration wasn't casual at all. It was actually a full-blown wedding for her. My aunt had hijacked my original venue to throw a lavish event for her daughter. I was floored. All those helpful suggestions and backhanded moves weren't just about control, they were about making my wedding plans fit her own agenda. She had even told my cousin, "It's her turn. Your cousin will have other chances to celebrate." While processing this betrayal, I got another call from my new caterer. Apparently, someone claiming to be me had tried to cancel our catering order. Thankfully, the security pin we'd set up based on a Reddit commenter's advice stopped the cancellation. That's when my fiancé suggested we consult a lawyer. We wanted to make sure our contracts with vendors were airtight and protected against further interference. We added clauses to prevent changes from anyone other than us. As all this unfolded, my cousin continued feeding me information about her mom's plans. The more I learned, the angrier I got. My aunt was essentially copying my entire wedding, venue, decorations, and even the guest list, and passing it off as her own event. I knew I couldn't just let this slide. I decided it was time to turn the tables. With my cousin's help, I started gathering evidence of my aunt's meddling. I compiled text messages, vendor receipts, and screenshots of her attempts to cancel my contracts. I also saved messages from family members confirming the lies she'd told about helping me plan. It was clear she had been manipulating everyone to justify her actions. To keep things moving, I updated Reddit with everything that had happened so far. The response was overwhelming again, with people urging me to fight back. Many suggested creative ways to expose my aunt without stooping to her level, and I started formulating a plan. My goal wasn't just to protect my wedding anymore, it was to make sure she thought twice before pulling something like this again. At this point, the pieces were all falling into place. I had the proof I needed, a new venue, and the support of my fiancé and Sam cousin. The next step was deciding how to reveal the truth in a way that would make an impact. For now, though, I'm staying focused on keeping my wedding plans secure and preventing any more surprises. Stay tuned, this isn't over yet. Update 2. After gathering evidence of my aunt's meddling, I decided it was time to take action. With help from my cousin, who was as fed up as I was, we started planning how to turn the tables. The goal wasn't just to protect my wedding anymore, it was to make sure everyone saw my aunt for what she was. The first move was subtle. I started posting vague updates on social media about family betrayal and how some people couldn't be trusted. I didn't name names, but I didn't need to. The posts were just cryptic enough to spark curiosity, and within a day I was getting messages from relatives asking what was going on. My aunt must have seen them too because she started calling other family members to clarify her version of events. This only made things worse for her since it planted seeds of doubt in everyone's minds. Meanwhile, my cousin worked her magic. She managed to join my aunt's event planning group chat by claiming she wanted to help with the family celebration. What she found confirmed everything we suspected. My aunt was going all out to replicate my wedding. She'd booked the same floral arrangements, copied the menu I'd originally chosen, and even planned a similar color scheme. But the kicker, she was bragging about how she'd outsmarted me and secured the original venue for her daughter's wedding. While this was unfolding, I contacted the original venue again. I explained the situation and asked if they could confirm why my reservation had been canceled. It turned out my aunt had lied, claiming the space was needed for a charity gala. Once the staff learned the truth, they were furious and assured me they'd investigate further. Next, we decided to RSVP to my aunt's event to keep her off guard. My cousin and I both marked ourselves as attending, playing it cool to make her think we weren't planning anything. At the same time, I finalized my own wedding details and made a public announcement on social media about the date, making it clear it overlapped with her family celebration. The post included beautiful photos of my new venue, which I knew would make waves in the family group chats. Then came the big reveal. My cousin leaked the invitations to her mom's event. They were designed to look like a charity gala invitation, but the wording made it clear it was a wedding. People were shocked when they realized my aunt had lied to everyone. Some relatives were furious and immediately called her out, while others quietly switched their RSVPs to my wedding instead. The divide in the family grew even sharper, and my aunt's carefully crafted narrative started to crumble. With momentum on our side, I orchestrated one final move. My aunt's event decorator was the same company I'd originally contacted before switching to a new vendor. Since I still had a good relationship with them, I explained what had happened and asked if they could help. They agreed to redirect my aunt's chosen decorations to a neutral storage facility for quality checks. This left her scrambling just days before her event. To add to the chaos, I anonymously tipped off the original venue about her fraudulent booking. They didn't take it lightly. With the charity excuse exposed, they canceled her reservation, leaving her with no venue at the last minute. She had to move the event to a community center, a far cry from the lavish affair she'd been planning. While all of this was happening, my fiancé was a constant source of reassurance. He reminded me that standing up for myself wasn't just about the wedding, it was about setting boundaries for the future. Vendors who heard about my situation were also incredibly supportive. A few even offered discounts, saying they admired how I was handling things. A couple of days before the wedding, my aunt called me out of the blue. She begged me to share my new venue with her, claiming there had been a misunderstanding, and that she just wanted both events to go smoothly. I calmly refused and hung up. By the time the dust settled, my wedding plans were locked in, and my aunt's event was in complete disarray. Her guests were left confused about the venue change, and many decided not to attend after learning the truth. My cousin told me my aunt spent the entire day ranting about how unfair it all was, completely oblivious to how her own actions had led to this. After everything was said and done, I posted my third update on Reddit, detailing the entire saga. Readers were thrilled to hear about my aunt's downfall, and the post quickly went viral. People were especially amused by how everything seemed to backfire on her in the end. Now, with just days to go before my wedding, I can finally breathe a little easier. The chaos has settled, and I'm looking forward to celebrating with the people who truly support us. Thank you to everyone who encouraged me to stand up for myself. I'll make sure to update you all once the wedding is over. Update 3. The wedding day finally arrived, and I'm thrilled to say it went off without a single hitch. Everything was absolutely perfect. The new venue turned out to be even more magical than I imagined. Fairy lights draped over the garden, the flowers were in full bloom, and every detail came together exactly as we had envisioned. Our guests, those who truly cared about us, were full of joy and love. It was intimate, heartfelt, and everything I'd hoped for. Meanwhile, my aunt's event was an absolute disaster. My cousin, who I guess you could call my inside source, kept me updated throughout the day. After losing her original venue and scrambling to find a replacement, my aunt ended up booking a small community center. The space wasn't designed for events like weddings, and it showed. The decorations were sparse, and with no time to find another decorator, she had to rely on store-bought streamers and balloons. The food? Cheap takeout pizzas stacked on folding tables. The guest list at her event also dwindled. Once word got out about her lies and manipulation, many relatives dropped out, choosing to attend my wedding instead. My cousin described the mood at her mother's event as awkward and tense. People who did show up seemed to realize they'd made the wrong choice and left early. By the time the ceremony started, it was clear her grand plans had completely fallen apart. Back at my wedding, the vibe couldn't have been more different. My cousin gave a touching speech during the reception. She talked about the importance of family unity, subtly calling out how some people let control and pride get in the way of real relationships. Her words struck a chord with everyone. I noticed several relatives tearing up, and afterward, some even came to apologize for initially siding with my aunt. It felt like a step toward healing, something I didn't think was possible just weeks ago. Later that evening, I updated Reddit with the entire saga. I shared how the wedding turned out, what happened at my aunt's disastrous event, and how everything had played out. The post blew up almost instantly, gathering over 50,000 upvotes in just a few hours. The comment section was wild, with people sharing similar stories of family drama and cheering me on for standing my ground. But the fallout didn't stop there. Somehow, the story caught the attention of a local news outlet. They reached out to me, asking if they could feature the tale in a piece about family dynamics and wedding drama. I kept it anonymous and agreed. The article went viral in our town, and I heard from relatives that my aunt was furious about it. She reportedly blamed sabotage for how everything had gone wrong, but refused to take any responsibility for her own actions. As expected, my aunt didn't let it end quietly. A week after the wedding, I received a notice that she was threatening legal action against me. Her claim? Defamation and emotional distress. My lawyer quickly dismissed it as baseless. There was no evidence to back her up, and frankly, it seemed like a desperate attempt to regain some control. She dropped it almost as quickly as she'd started it. On a more positive note, the wedding drama seemed to mend a lot of fractured family relationships. Many relatives who had initially taken my aunt's side reached out to apologize. They admitted they hadn't realized the full extent of her manipulation and regretted doubting me. While I don't think everything will ever be completely back to normal, it feels good to know that most of the family is on the same page now. After the dust settled, my fiancé and I left for our honeymoon, a week of absolute bliss in Bali. It was exactly what we needed to decompress after all the chaos. We spent our days exploring beaches, eating amazing food, and just enjoying each other's company. For the first time in months, we didn't have to think about weddings, family drama, or anything stressful. Reflecting on everything that happened, I've realized how much stronger this ordeal made my relationship with my husband. He stood by me through every twist and turn, reminding me of what really mattered. It also taught me an important lesson about boundaries. Just because someone is family doesn't mean they have the right to control your life or ruin your happiness. As for my aunt, she's officially blocked on every platform. I've cut all contact with her and her immediate family, and I plan to keep it that way. Life is too short to deal with toxic people, no matter how close they're supposed to be. Before closing this chapter, I want to thank everyone who supported me through Reddit. The advice, encouragement, and even the funny comments kept me sane during one of the most stressful periods of my life. I've learned so much from this community, and I hope my story helps others who might be going through something similar. To those who asked how I plan to handle family events in the future, I'll be keeping my distance from anyone who tries to stir up drama. My husband and I are starting fresh, and we're determined to build a life that's peaceful and full of love. This will likely be my last update, but I want to leave you all with this. Don't let anyone steal your joy, and never be afraid to stand up for yourself. Family isn't about blood, it's about the people who truly support and care for you. Thank you for being part of my journey. Update 4. It's been a whirlwind since my last update, but things have finally settled for the most part. I wanted to share all the juicy details about what happened, especially with my aunt. Buckle up, because the fallout was as dramatic as you might imagine. Our wedding day turned out to be perfect. We pulled off a magical celebration at the new venue without any drama or interruptions. The garden was glowing under the string lights, and every little detail came together exactly as planned. The people who showed up were there for us, and the love and joy in the air were tangible. Some family members, mostly those who had sided with my aunt, didn't show up. Honestly, it was a relief. Their absence made the atmosphere lighter, and we didn't have to deal with any passive-aggressive comments or awkwardness. Instead, we were surrounded by people who genuinely cared about us, making the day even more special. Meanwhile, over at the family celebration, my aunt's event was an absolute disaster. My cousin, who was there as a reluctant participant, kept me updated throughout the day. After losing her original venue and scrambling for a replacement, my aunt ended up booking a last-minute community center. The space was tiny, poorly lit, and completely unsuitable for a wedding. Because my aunt hadn't planned for the change, the setup was bare bones. There were folding chairs, mismatched tables, and a few half-hearted decorations that looked like they'd been picked up at a dollar store. She couldn't find a replacement caterer on such short notice, so guests were served takeout pizza straight from the boxes. The cake? A supermarket sheet cake hastily picked up that morning. It was worlds away from the elegant affair she had envisioned. If that wasn't bad enough, one of her key vendors, a florist she'd hired to recreate the arrangements I had originally planned, refused to deliver. Turns out she hadn't paid the deposit. So her big floral centerpiece idea, completely missing. Guests who showed up expecting an elaborate event were visibly unimpressed. Some even left early, either out of frustration or to come to my wedding instead. My cousin said the tension was so thick you could cut it with a knife. The cherry on top? Someone posted photos of her chaotic event in our local community Facebook group with a caption about karma hitting hard. The pictures showed the bare setup, mismatched decor, and pizza boxes on the tables. The post quickly went viral, and the comments were brutal. People in the community recognized her from her extravagant parties and had a field day with the irony. Needless to say, my aunt was furious. The day after the wedding, my aunt confronted me. She accused me of sabotaging her event and ruining her daughter's big day. I calmly reminded her that she had sabotaged my wedding first and that all I did was stand up for myself. She didn't have much to say after that, but stormed off, leaving a trail of muttered complaints behind her. On the flip side, my cousin privately thanked me for standing up to her mom. She admitted she had always felt controlled and was inspired by how I handled the situation. It was a bittersweet moment because I could tell she felt guilty about being caught in the middle. I reassured her that none of this was her fault and that I hoped she could break free from her mom's manipulative grip. As expected, my aunt wasn't ready to let things go quietly. A few days later, I received a notice that she was threatening legal action. Her claims? Defamation and emotional distress. My lawyer dismissed the threats immediately. There was no evidence to back her up, and her case had no legs to stand on. She must have realized this too because the threats disappeared as quickly as they came. On a more positive note, the wedding drama seems to have been a turning point for some family relationships. Many relatives who had initially sided with my aunt reached out to apologize. They admitted they hadn't realized the extent of her manipulation and regretted doubting me. While I'm not expecting miracles, it feels like the start of something healthier within the family. Once the dust settled, my fiancé and I escaped to Bali for our honeymoon. It was everything we needed and more. We spent our days exploring beaches, indulging in amazing food, and soaking in the beauty around us. For the first time in months, we were able to fully relax and focus on each other. Reflecting on the whole ordeal, I've learned a lot about boundaries and self-respect. Family ties don't mean you have to tolerate toxic behavior. I've officially gone no contact with my aunt. She's blocked on every platform, and I've made it clear to the rest of the family that she's not welcome in my life moving forward. To everyone who followed this journey, thank you for your advice, support, and encouragement. Your words kept me grounded during the chaos. If there's one thing I want others to take away from this, it's that you should never let anyone, family or not, control your life or steal your joy. Stand firm, set boundaries, and protect your happiness. This is likely my last update, but I'll always be grateful for this community. Update 5. I can't believe how far we've come since my first post. When I started sharing this saga, I was overwhelmed and unsure how to navigate the chaos my aunt had caused. Now, everything feels like it's finally falling into place, and I'm excited to give you all a proper wrap-up of where things stand. After my last update went viral, the response was unbelievable. I received messages from people all over the world, some sharing similar stories of family drama and others just offering kind words. It was surreal to see how many people resonated with my experience. The most touching messages came from people who told me that reading about my journey gave them the courage to stand up for themselves in their own lives. It's amazing how a community of strangers can be so supportive. The fallout for my aunt has been significant. Her reputation within the family has taken a massive hit. Many relatives who were once loyal to her have now distanced themselves. A few have even cut ties entirely, saying they can't deal with her manipulative ways anymore. She's become somewhat of a pariah at family gatherings, and from what I hear, she's not handling it well. It seems she still hasn't accepted any responsibility for her actions and continues to blame everyone else for her problems. One unexpected silver lining is my cousin's newfound independence. After everything that happened, she made the brave decision to move out of her mom's house. She's starting fresh and even looking into therapy to work through the control issues she grew up with. We've stayed in touch, and I couldn't be prouder of her for taking this step. She deserves so much better than the environment she was stuck in, and I'm excited to see her thrive. On a personal note, my husband and I recently received the final wedding album from our photographer, and it's absolutely breathtaking. Every photo captured the joy and love of that day, and looking through them reminds me of how worth it all the stress and drama was. It feels good to know that we created something beautiful despite all the challenges. Interestingly, the entire ordeal has opened up some unexpected opportunities for me. A popular wedding blog reached out after my story went viral, asking if they could feature it with identifying details removed, of course. They thought it would resonate with couples navigating tricky family dynamics. That feature led to a few other opportunities, including guest writing pieces about setting boundaries during wedding planning. It's strange to think that something so stressful turned into a creative outlet and even a small side hustle. Another major change is how much stronger my boundaries have become. This experience taught me the importance of standing firm, even when it's uncomfortable. I've been much better at enforcing limits with other family members. No more guilt trips, unsolicited advice, or letting others steamroll my decisions. I've made it clear that my life is my own, and while it hasn't been easy, it's been incredibly freeing. One of the ways we've decided to move forward is by creating new traditions. My husband and I have started hosting annual celebration dinners with the relatives who supported us throughout this journey. It's a small way to show gratitude and foster healthier relationships within the family. The first one was a huge success, and we're looking forward to making it a yearly tradition. As for my aunt, she hasn't learned her lesson. She's already tried to insert herself into another relative's wedding plans, but this time, people saw the red flags early and shut her down. It's clear she hasn't changed, but thankfully more family members are onto her now. The ripple effects of her actions seem to have made others more cautious, which is a small win in itself. Through all of this, my husband's family has been an incredible source of support. They've welcomed me with open arms and treated me with nothing but kindness and understanding. Knowing I have their unwavering support has made all the difference, and I'm so grateful to have them in my life. To make sure this experience doesn't weigh me down long term, I've started therapy. It's been incredibly helpful in processing the lingering resentment and understanding how to navigate future family dynamics without sacrificing my peace of mind. I highly recommend it to anyone dealing with similar challenges. It's a game changer. The Reddit community has also been amazing. I've stayed active in related subs, offering advice to others dealing with difficult family members. It feels good to pay it forward, especially knowing how much this platform helped me during my own struggles. One final update: switching venues ended up saving us a significant amount of money. We've put those savings toward our next big goal, buying a house. It feels like a fresh start in so many ways, and we're excited to build a future together in a space that's completely ours. To everyone who followed this roller coaster journey, thank you. Your advice, encouragement, and humor kept me grounded during one of the most stressful times of my life. If there's one thing I hope people take away from this, it's that you should never let anyone steal your joy or control your happiness. Stand firm, set boundaries, and don't be afraid to call out toxic behavior when it's necessary. As for us, we're focused on building a life full of love, laughter, and new adventures. This will likely be my last update, but I'll carry the lessons I've learned here with me forever. Thank you for being part of this journey and for reminding me of the power of community. Here's to brighter days ahead.